Howdy, friends. While we get the computer set up to show you the demo that we're all going to work through together, I just want to put some of the numbers that Carl and the rest of the group has been talking about in context. So in Texas last year, Ted Cruz got 4.2 million votes, and we want to try to make sure that we take some of those votes and we pull them over to our side. We lost by about 220,000. We need to pull from that pool. There are 5 million people who are registered but didn't vote, and there's at least 2.5 million Democrats in that group, including more than 350,000 in Travis County alone. So we could have won last year's election with just Travis County, just Fort Bend County, just Harris, just Dallas, just Tarrant. Any of those could have won the race for us. But most importantly, we have 8 million unregistered people in Texas. We have the most of any state by percentage and by absolute number. So one of the big reasons why we've been attacking this problem so hard is that we have about 2 weeks to get people out to vote every election cycle. But we have 48 weeks a year where we can register people to vote before that deadline hits. So we have an opportunity, but all of our tools have been optimized to focus the work of getting people out to vote in those final 2 weeks. And we think that this is a gap that needs to be addressed, is that our candidates and our leaders and those of us who are volunteers in this community need tools to work now so that we can actually get the job done ahead of the election. So for example, yesterday, local elections all throughout Texas, Smithville, we lost a Democratic seat by 1 vote, so that we just lost a seat. In Bastrop, we failed to flip one by about 100 votes. We sent a couple dozen folks out from Austin to a bunch of different areas. But the turnout rate on average across the state was 4.2%. So if we could have gotten to 6% of eligible voters, we would have won every local race in Texas. Lakeway was bad. I mean, just people aren't voting because they do not know. And because it is not convenient to know, it is not useful, it is not easy to understand. So we need a better way for all of us here to do the work without needing to wait until those final months where the Beto campaign can afford to buy an expensive tool to give to all of us. So we have built this nonprofit to essentially focus on giving you all a better way to register voters now. And so some of you saw it last year with our prototype. We call it Mapthe.vote. We're showing you each house where the unregistered voters are, prioritized by who we think are the most likely to be kind of an underserved community. So this here is Mapthe.vote. If you have a phone, please pull it out. Or a tablet or a computer. If you have any digital device of any kind, you can pull it out. You can use your internet service as it is, but there's also a community Wi-Fi here called TC Guest Wi-Fi for anybody who needs it. But this isn't going to be too intense on your phone. And then can we show the URL really quick first? So the URL that you're going to type into your browser, not into the search bar, but into your browser URL bar, is Mapthe.vote. And we have a few people distributed around the room to help anybody who's having trouble. So for now, hold questions. I'll give plenty of time for questions from everybody. But if you need help accessing it, just raise your hand and somebody will come and help you. When you get to that website, you're going to need to log in with any email. It doesn't have to be a Google email. You log in with any email in order to utilize that. And that's so that we can tell you all the work that you're doing, so that you get a list back of all the people you've helped register. You can go back and help those people vote later. It's a useful way for us to track what's going on, and it also lets us make sure that we don't have malicious users from certain campaigns or foreign countries attacking people when we're trying to help them to register. So that's Mapthe.vote. All right, everybody looks hunkered down, so we're going to go ahead and I'll pull up what it looks like. This is what you should see once you get past that login screen. You should see a map of where we are right now with some green icons surrounding us. Robbie, behind you. What I'd like for you to do while you're working at your table is to find your own neighborhood. So let's go ahead and demonstrate. If you click the menu button at the bottom left, you will see an address search bar that pops up, and you can search your address in Texas. When you do that, it should load up your area, and then you will be able to see the unregistered voters right now. These are Democrats who have moved into the state. They have moved here from Oregon, from California, from New York. They have moved here from Dallas, from Houston. They've crossed a county line. They have crossed a state line, or we have some other information that we have reason to believe that this person is not registered to vote right now. And it shows you exactly where they are, house by house. So you can see how many people in each house as well. So you can go right to your next door neighbor, see that there are 2 eligible adults who could register there, and you can help each of them individually. So when we click on one of these addresses here, we see, for example, go ahead and click in. There's 2 addresses at this point. We have 8405 Old Bee Cave Road, apartment 734, and apartment 1523. There are people who are not registered to vote in each of those apartments. So we can tell by apartment number, by dorm number, by duplex code, by quadplex, any of those kind of functionalities where people are right now. We're working on solutions for mobile home parks, for Indian reservations, for military bases, some of these kind of trickier problems. But for the most part, we have most of the addresses across the whole country. So we are pioneering this in Texas right now, and we are rolling out all of these new features that we have created throughout this month. And our goal is for all of you to use this in your neighborhoods and give us feedback about what is working and what is not right away, because this is going to go out to the whole country at the end of this month. Everyone across the entire U.S. will be able to see and register their neighbors to vote, so that we don't have to wait to win elections to change the laws to make it fairer. We can instead go one by one to each house in our own neighborhoods. So this gets us around these voter suppression laws, around old Jim Crow laws, so we can register enough people now over the next year and a half to win big in 2020. And then in state legislatures and the U.S. legislature across the country, we can change the laws to make them fairer after that. So that is the general strategy to this. It will be a free product for anyone in the country to use at all times, maintained by our nonprofit. And so we will use this to try to register millions of voters by the work of volunteers who actually live there and do the work. So we need your help to improve this map so that it works well enough for people in Michigan and New York and Wisconsin and Florida and Ohio over the coming year. So it is extremely important that you all go test this and break it. Your job is to break our app, okay? Hopefully it will be hard, but there will be some obvious things. We'll be fixing those. We were using the same map to turn out people who are already registered yesterday in local elections across the state. So now we've reconfigured the data table to be unregistered voters so that it is focused for the job at hand. And when it comes time, next election cycle, so when we have Houston City Council elections in November, and when we have primary elections next year, and local elections next May, and then we have the November elections next year in 2020, we will toggle this map. We will give you a map that essentially does the same thing, but it shows you every Democrat who has not voted yet. So you can go to people who haven't mailed in their ballot, haven't voted each day, and we can get them out to vote. But for now, the majority of our time needs to be on registering those unregistered voters. There are far more of them than there are any other category of people we could persuade from Republicans, of people to turn out who are already registered. There are so many people who are unaware that they have moved to a state that has a law with a deadline that is very different from where they came from, because there are 39 states across the country that have online registration. And there are 17 states where you can just register and vote on the same day. You don't need to be pre-registered. And most states don't have a voter ID law. But if you come to Texas from Oregon, if you come here from California, it's a little bit confusing. You should not be expected to know what the arcane election laws are in a random county that you move to. But that's the way our system currently works. So this program will help everybody utilize it. You can register them as a VDR in person with a form. So Kelly, if you would, go ahead and click. We have somebody here at 7008 Covered Bridge Drive. So we're going to pretend that I'm talking to them right now. I registered them to vote. Yes. Did I register them? Yes. And we're going to go ahead and put in a first name so we can keep track. So I just registered Kelly to vote. And then I click OK. And then was there anyone else at that house? There might be other people who are not home right now. But we're going to go ahead and click no, and then move on out of this dialog. And now that dot has just turned blue on the map. It is a live map. You will all see it at the exact same time. Anyone in the country, if there are millions of people using it, can use it at the same time, and there's no chance of conflict because it is a live map at all times. And we will connect it to tools like Vote.org and Turbo.vote and Rock.the.vote that register people online. And we will connect it to tools and organizations that register people by mail. And we will connect it to people who register folks in any other method at site-based registration from other VDRs, so that as the county registers them, this is updating in real time. So this is the goal here. There are only, in this zoomed out view of a local area in Austin, something like 30 to 40 unregistered locations. Everyone here should be able to knock out a few hundred together over the next 2 weeks, just by taking care of the ones that are nearest you. What I do in my neighborhood is when I walk the dog at night, I take a different route based on where there are unregistered voters. And I visit about 2 or 3 a night with my dogs, and it works great because people are not unfriendly to somebody with cute dogs coming to the door. So if you were looking for a puppy, now's a good reason, all right? But the idea here is that you can use your own methods. If you are walking your cat, or, I don't think that's a thing, but if you are visiting with your neighbors, holding a community block party, if you have an hour off at lunch and you want to register people near your office, we have registered people to vote near our office during lunch hours. You can essentially see where they are at any given time. So what I would like for you to do on your phones is to bookmark whatever method you use to keep track of your URLs so you don't have to remember it. Bookmark that link. Add it to your favorites. Add it to something where you can get back to it very easily. That way you can always find it when you need to. And so collectively, together, we can register so many people that they cannot win, that they cannot see it coming because it won't even be on their files. All of these legions of voter data that they stole in Cambridge Analytica and everything else, they won't even be aware of all the unregistered people because they're not even on the lists. So these are people we get that are essentially bonus votes that they can't see and they can't predict. And so this is an extremely effective and efficient and cheap way to prepare to win the Senate race, to flip the state legislature, and to flip the state for the presidency. So I would strongly encourage you to please test it out so that we fix it so that it works in Ohio and Florida and all these other states when we roll it out in a really big way. So we right here in Austin will be at the forefront of a whole new movement of better technology and motivated volunteers all across the country. Questions? Go ahead and pull up the map. So in some states, there's party registration that people 2 years ago registered as a Democrat or Republican. People have voted in primaries. They have made donations to Barack Obama, to other candidates. We are prioritizing underserved communities with our nonprofit, but it is nonpartisan. That's right. You can certainly invite people to register to vote in that Democratic primary so that they tell you how they feel right off the bat.
What do you say to somebody who says, I don't want to register?
Yeah, so this is an extremely common thing that happens. There are people out there who feel like it's all bad or that it's pointless or they don't understand or it's embarrassing. They don't feel like they know enough. That's like a very honest feeling from people who say like, look, I don't know enough to vote. And that's an extremely like open and kind of humble opinion that I always enjoy. What I always say to them is that you, as a citizen, do not actually have the right to vote. What you have is an option, if you clear all of these bureaucratic hurdles in advance, to potentially vote later. But right now, if you are not registered, you don't even have the choice of voting on election day. But if you fill out this form, if you register to vote, you give yourself the choice to decide later. You give yourself the choice to meet somebody and say, I really like this candidate. I would like to vote for them, and to be able to exercise that later. But if you miss that by 1 day on that deadline, you'd lose that choice. And so you don't actually have the right to vote. What you have is the right to fill out this form and to be eligible later. So I always encourage them to fill out this form to give yourself the choice. And I find that that usually works in almost every case. But even I have run into people who it's not going to happen today. But the nice thing is they'll still be on the map. Someone else will try, and maybe that person will succeed.
How do you deal with, I'm sure you probably had someone look at you really strange and say, who are you and how do you know my information?
Definitely. So you'll notice when we click on this, we're not revealing any personally identifiable information about anybody because we are aware it's a public map, even though all of us grew up with phone books and you would look up names, phone numbers, and addresses in a book they mailed to you. This is now considered weird and creepy if it's on the internet, right? So we recognize that. And so we are putting just the location, and we are saying that I'm a volunteer with Travis County. I register voters, and I'm just working with the county to try to help people in my own neighborhood. So I'm here to check in. I don't tell them that we've secretly making sure everybody's registered to vote. Wanted to check in and see if you're registered to vote. Can I check with you? Can we confirm? Would you be interested in getting registered now? Save yourself the hassle later. So I don't necessarily approach it from a, like I have this lots of data on you, right? It's very much like I put the phone away and I walk up and I fill out the form with them. And then when I step back, I fill it out on my phone. Does that make sense? I would not encourage you to like, it will be too much explanation to try to give a stranger at the door.
Yeah, this is really cool. What do the Republicans do?
So right, as far as we know, there is not a Republican voter registration group that attempts this in the same way. We monitor their technology, and they are generally much more focused on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, different accounts, sharing articles from Breitbart, sharing them from the Daily Caller and Fox and all these other groups. So they are generally focused more on advertising tools rather than door-to-door tools. So we are not aware of anything yet that has reached this level for them, but we do know that there is something in the works where they can see their friends and family and they can essentially report them to the Trump app as if they're voting yes or no for Trump. And we're probably going to see that from almost every candidate in the next 2 years. There are a lot of new tools coming out where you can use your phone to identify how people are going to vote based on what you know about them. We've seen the Bernie campaign roll this out. We've seen the Trump campaign has their own app that they're rolling out. So I would expect there will be a lot of that. But fundamentally, it's not getting at the core structural problem of it's fine to say, I know that so-and-so is, a big supporter of Trump, but they might not be registered to vote and they aren't necessarily focused on that priority. And I don't think they're betting on voter registration the same way that we are. So if you hear about something, definitely let us know. We have a whole red team channel where we look at what they're doing and try to prepare and copy the smart things and avoid the bad things. So we're always interested if you know of something.
So if you go to someone's house and you find out that they're not a citizen, because I know that there are some of those in my neighborhood, how
Yes, we have accounted for that. Kelly? So if I talk with someone and I don't register them to vote, they might be ineligible. So I can let's go ahead and do that I talked to Kelly again. And what's going to happen is we recognize that some people are not eligible. We are not keeping track of citizenship status or anything else. We are going to keep track of when they can become eligible. So you can put in that someone will turn 18 or they will come off paper as a felon, or which means that they are no longer on probation. When someone is finished serving probation, they are eligible to vote again. And that they will become a citizen at a set time. And we are going to have this here in this tool so that we are keeping track that Jeremy will become a citizen next year on May 3rd. And we're going to hide that map dot until I become eligible. And then you will see a little star pop up in your neighborhood that says someone just became eligible to vote here. And you can store that for multiple different reasons. But we don't want to keep a record of who's a citizen or not, or who is a felon or not. Instead, we just track it as eligibility changes. Does that make sense? So you can actually keep track of that. And I'll show you a few more. So go ahead and exit out of that, or we're going to clean this data afterward. So, because this is a lot to remember. So, all right, go ahead and give me another one. Uncontacted. I talked with them, but didn't register. There's a couple of different things that can happen. They might already be registered. So we want you to tell us, because that means our information is not matching correctly, and we want to figure out why that is. Sometimes there are errors in the addresses from the county. We found that counties have bad zip codes and bad standardization. Sometimes it's the postal system that has an error. Sometimes it's our system that has an error. You marking that there's a problem means we are going to dive into it and figure out why, and remove that as a pattern, so that if you find an error, it's going to fix it for thousands of dots all across the country. So it's really important that you record exactly what happened. Other things that can happen is they are ineligible. They are an out-of-state renter, vacationer, Airbnb, some other tool that this is not a place where people live. This is a commercial property. It's been converted into a restaurant or a daycare. Nobody lives here. There's a language barrier. You can't register them because you can't communicate with them. You mark that and put in the language that you think is needed, and we will show that to people who say they have a particular language proficiency on their profile. So we will actually here shortly have a profile where you can fill out if you speak. There's someone in Austin who needs a Vietnamese speaker or a Spanish speaker or a Mandarin speaker or anything else. And so they need to send somebody who speaks that language. They've requested that we not contact them. They really don't want to be bothered. They're tired of all the well-meaning Blue Action Dems knocking on their doors. Someone's unavailable, right? There's some reason. And then another problem, anything else you can put there and to us, and we'll try to figure out how to make this work better. And then I want to show you real quick where you can go to report the bugs. If you click on the bottom right here, there's a help button, and it says contact us. And so you can email that account anytime, and we are going to read what you have to say, and we're going to figure out what the problem was. So tell us exactly where it occurred. What was the address? What was the name of the person, if relevant? Who you are, although we'll see that if you're using the same email. What happened? Describe it to us so we can fix it, because we really want this to work well for anybody who uses it. We are trying to optimize it for color blindness and accessibility and language so that it works for multiple different people. And we are going to work to translate the whole app so that Spanish speakers who don't know any English can actually use this and go out and register people. So please do use this contact form. If you ever have a problem, just click help. So I got one over here.
For houses that are inaccessible because they're dated, do we put that in the other section?
I will show you. We have that option too. So if you can't talk with someone because it's inaccessible, you can come down. There might be no address there. Maybe it's just, it's an error. It's a gated or locked building of some kind. There's a hazard of some kind, like a dog or flooding or whatever. It just alerts other people who are walking there to know that there's something that's going to make this tougher. And if we start to see a whole bunch of locked, gated buildings in a particular area, this is particularly problematic with gated communities, or in New York or Pennsylvania, they have a lot of brownstones that have a locked front door. It's very hard to get into. So we will identify people who live in that building who are already Democratic volunteers and invite them to take care of their own neighbors, which is why we keep track by individual apartment unit. And then you can tell us, you didn't mean to tap on this, you just want to get out of this. Any of the above. If we're missing something, you should tell us that this is a common thing that happens and we need to add this.
So real quick, if you go and you talk to them and you drop off a white form and they say they'll send it in and you say that they're registered.
You can mark them as registered. What we don't count it until the county says they're registered. So it doesn't matter if you fill out the form with them by hand or you give it to them and they mail it back. 1 out of every 8 forms in Texas gets rejected because they can't read the handwriting, right? So we are watching to see if the county says they're registered. So we're going to hide it temporarily because you said that you were successful. And we're trusting that from all of you, but we recognize that there are things that happen that prevent someone from getting registered. The county can't read the form, it gets lost, it gets wet, there's something happens, they forgot a signature, they forgot an address, they typed it wrong, whatever happens, we will put them back on the map if the county doesn't register them within the next 60 days. And that's true everywhere in the state. So we're trying to cover that, but you can mark it for the white forms as long as you've actually talked to someone. If you just leave one at the door, we would encourage you to just mark it as you weren't successful yet. But we are going to monitor when Matt and the team at Travis County say that someone is registered on their county website, it is updating in the map in real time.
So Gary, what do you do like if you know somebody just moved in the neighborhood and you register them? Is there a way to add?
There will be shortly. Not quite yet, but by the end of this month, there will be a way for you to add in that there's a new person. We're working on that right now. So I'm sorry, but we're going to add that functionality. Go ahead.
Okay, this is actually kind of important because when I was block walking for Page Ellis in my neighborhood, I was knocking on doors of people who had not voted yet.
Yes.
And just Democratic or people that were on the Democratic list, and they were, most of them were very kind and gracious, but this one fella was absolutely horrible. He said I was soliciting, and I said, actually, I'm not. He said, actually, you are, and I don't want you to ever come to my house again.
Sure.
Well, you know, it's a little nasty.
This is a very hostile interaction.
Very hostile. But as far as soliciting, what would be your answer to
So
that?
for voter registration, we are not soliciting, right? We are helping other people. We are protecting and preserving their civil rights. We're not asking them for money. We're not asking them for any, we're not soliciting a candidate right now. Political activity is a protected category that's defined differently from soliciting. There's a lot of people running for office who are lawyers who can explain this better. But fundamentally, you are okay. You're not doing anything wrong by that. And it's perfectly reasonable to just say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bother you. Just trying to help make sure everybody has a chance to vote. I will leave. And what I do is I just extricate from the situation and let someone else try in a different way. But the goal of this is it's a little bit warmer if someone from the neighborhood tries. So if I walk up to a neighbor and say, hey, like, you know, it's Jeremy, you live next door. You borrowed some eggs once. Just, you saw that you moved to the neighborhood and I forgot to ask you if you had a chance to register to vote, right? And so this is meant to facilitate warmer conversations so there's less spam, less, less of a stranger approach, but to make it a little bit more binding in communities and to make it easier to be a precinct chair and a block captain because you can take care of and cover your whole street. I saw Kathy with your hand. You sure can very shortly. So we have designed it and we are implementing it, and you won't see it today, but probably within a week. There is a button where you're going to click it and it's going to go right to register vote, so you don't even have to remember the URL. So that is a great question.
Possible a person would say, I don't know if I'm registered?
Yes, that is a common one. People don't know if they are registered, especially at their current address. So the same thing with register to vote, we'll let them check in about 30 seconds. It's very fast. That will be right here, so you can check someone's voter registration. And if they're on this map, it's 99% of the time because the county does not have them registered to vote. So that is, like, generally speaking, this map is more correct. The only reasons why it wouldn't be is if there's some error we haven't accounted for, like with trailer or lot numbers that are very unusual that we just haven't thought of, or if there's some sort of error with their name, or if they recently registered and we just haven't gotten the update in the last week. So if someone got registered 3 days ago through something that's not one of you all using the map, we might not know that yet, but it will be updated soon. So it is entirely possible you will come across someone who says they are already registered and they insist and you check and they are. That's why you mark the already registered button. I think we have time for about 2 or 3 more questions here. Go ahead.
Also just gonna say, if somebody says, I don't know if I'm registered, you can just tell them, when in doubt, fill it out.
That's right. So if they aren't sure and you can't get to a resolution, the easiest thing to do is it takes, under 2 minutes to fill out a form. Just go ahead and fill it out with them. Get them registered to be sure. Generally speaking, we want to use best practices to limit the amount of time spent, but when in doubt, definitely default to getting re-registered and updated because it's better to be sure that you're eligible to vote. Lynn.
I would just like to add, if you get into a conversation with somebody and you confirm that they're a Democrat, I like to say, do you promise me you'll vote? Or I'll put a vote roll in so that they know that we know.
Be a block captain and a voter registrar with one system and then change between those roles. Always remembering that as a VDR, you have to help anybody you come across register to vote. But then if you're going to other houses where they're already registered, you can talk to them about something else. So we will enable you to do this exact same thing all the time, always online, so you can update your precinct chairs and your candidates at any given moment. And our approach is that it's the volunteers who often do the work and collect the data for the campaigns. So you own the data that you are creating and producing. And so you can choose to share that with the Beto campaign. You can share it with Amy Klobuchar. You can share it with Julie Oliver or someone running for local office. So our approach is that the volunteers are the ones doing the work and owning that data, so that candidates like Julie Oliver came in and Kathy Thomas is running, they have to buy access to the data that all the volunteers collected previously. We want to change that approach and make sure it's always on, so the volunteers are always benefiting from the data you've all collected already. So that's the general idea with what we want to change it to, and we strongly, would appreciate anybody's feedback making this better. That is the goal. Everything you do gives us feedback to help the entire country at once. So it is extremely important that you go out there and you try it and fail at it and tell us why, and also succeed at it and tell us what is working great, so we can highlight it or reorder it, make it simpler and easier to use for everybody. I think that's all the time we have for questions. I will be out in the hallway with a bunch of other folks if you have more specific questions, those of you who are already VDRs. And then obviously email us at support if you have any questions, you need help, you want to get something together, if you want to think about how to do a church challenge or a school challenge or something near your neighborhood to get more people out there using this tool, feel free to share it. We would love to help. So thank you all for your time and attention today, and it's always wonderful to see you.